Hello and a warm welcome to Federal special program Capital Beat. Post US indictment of Gautam Adani, it seems that trouble for Mr. Gautam Adani are not getting over. Now, the Kenyan government last evening, everyone saw, had cancelled the airport deal, and another 30-year-old power project deal also stood scrapped. And this is an announcement which he made inside the Kenyan parliament. And now Adani Group's Australian coal unit faces racism charge and human rights violation. And this is on the basis of a complaint which has been filed with the Human Rights Commission group. And according to the complaint, the Adani employees verbally and physically obstructed and prevented the members of the Aboriginal group from accessing the springs near the Adani's Carmichael coal mine. And apparently, prevented them from performing the cultural rites and also prevented them from sharing the cultural knowledge. Now, what is going to be the impact on Adani's prospects worldwide? And how does it impact the corporate sector in India? What could be the political fallout? We'll try and discuss all of this. Joining me now is Supreme Court lawyer Sanjay Hegde. Thank you so much, sir, for joining. We have Giri Prakash, who's the business editor of The Federal. Thank you, Giri, for joining. And let me begin with Mr. Sanjay Hegde, that last evening, Kenyan Parliament, inside the Kenyan Parliament, President Mr. William Ruto had announced that, the power deals and the airport deals stand scrapped as far as the deals with the Adani are concerned. Now, Kenya has done this, and now this is the latest complaint which has been filed with the Human Rights Commission, where the Australian unit, the coal unit of Adani, faces racism with charges of human rights violation. Uh, do you see a link somewhere between the two, or these are two separate cases? But given the fact that the larger case is how Adani has been functioning and how Adani operates, is it not like troubles mounting for Adani?
Shakespeare somewhere said, "Troubles come not singly, but they come in battalions," and that's what happens. The thing is also that when there a aura of immunity starts breaking, that's when more and more cases come up. Now, the facts as far as the Australian case is concerned is maybe old. And it is something which is still solvable, because even the Aborigines seem to be asking for an apology, for sensitization of the staff, etc., etc. It may not have an immediate financial impact, except in terms of reputational damage. But you add the Aborigines to the environmentalists in Australia, you add to it the general bad odor that the Adani group gives, especially after being kicked out of projects in Kenya, with the prosecution in the United States, and the Bangladesh Supreme Court also now looking into the power purchase agreement. It does not look like Mr. Adani and the Adani group are going to have an easy ride anywhere. They will be fair game for a lot of both activists as well as speculators.
All right. So, Giri, if I may come to you now, how do you see this entire development in terms of, how the corporate sector will get impacted? Not only the Adani Group. First of all, if you could just explain how Adani Group gets affected, its prospects worldwide in other countries, because it's just not Australia or US. It's so many countries like Bangladesh, Switzerland. Also, the some court records have come out. So how does it impact the Adani Group, and what is the kind of impact you see on the entire corporate sector in India now?
Okay, as far as the first question is concerned, let us look at some of the investments planned across the globe. US, we know 15-20 days ago, soon after President Trump's re-election, the Adani Group announced a $10 billion investment in infrastructure projects. They promised 15,000 jobs, and now that could get into cold storage. We know about the Carmichael coal mine. It has always been very controversial, right from the time when the State Bank of India led group of consortium decided to finance or fund that project. And initially it was it was supposed to have a output of around 60 million tons, but because of all the protests, they reduced to 10 million tons. But it has nothing to do with whatever that happened day for yesterday. If you take it in isolation, it was again because of protests there. Kenya, of course, they have decided to stop Adani from investing there, but it was a very high $736 million, which included power transmission lines, and it also included managing the entire Nairobi's airport. And as far as Tanzania is concerned, again $900 million for high voltage power lines, and Vietnam $10 billion investment for renewable energy projects. Nepal and Bhutan 10 gigawatts of hydroelectric projects, and there was some in Abu Dhabi as well. So all this will now get really affected, and this is something that I mean, why will they get affected? Because it will become very difficult for Adanis to go ahead and raise funds. And today S&P Global has actually said that it is going to impact his investments. You see, when the Hindenburg report came, it led to a bit of an Adani Group's stock crash. But I don't think any of the rating agency really said that it's going to impact. But today, almost everybody is saying it, and I think that needs to be taken cognizance of. And so this is one issue that they will have to get through, because there was another research firm called Credit Sites that has actually said that refinancing of Adani Group's green energy business.
Giri, you were talking about the refinancing of the green energy projects. Now, how do those get impacted now? Especially, because the U.S. indictment is related to the Adani Green Energy Limited.
Yeah, so there is this research firm called Credit Sites, which has said that the refinancing of Adani Group's green energy business, which is actually its biggest, there will be issues regarding that, and there is a possibility that some of these funding will get squeezed out. And now let us now look at the way Adani Group does business. What it does is it bids for a project, gets that project, and then gets it financed from a whole lot of investors. It could be US, it could be Europe, or it could be some of the Indian consortium of banks. Now, once they do it, they either expand or invest in it, and then they use that project to get another project like that they've been doing. It's like a chain kind of thing, right? Now, when one link of the chain snaps, like the way it might end up after the US SEC allegation, there is a problem that not just this project but several other projects could get hampered. And he's known as someone who goes and acquires a whole lot of companies. He's not someone. It's not like he has set it up himself. Let us look at ports. Let us look at cement. He has gone ahead and bought them. Airports in India, he has gone and bought them. He hasn't set up these airports on his own, and therefore they require constant investment. Where is he going to get them from? And now it becomes much more difficult for him to get those kind of funding. It's not going to be easy. Even if he gets, it will be at a very high interest rate.
Right. Okay, so you are saying that the funding might get squeezed. It would be bigger troubles for Adani in the days to come, because he might not be able to fund his projects easily, and especially when it comes to the refinancing of the energy green projects. If I may come to you, Mr. Hegde, now, what do you think are going to be the bigger repercussions if you look at the things from the financial prism? Now, is this crisis bigger than Hindenburg? Is this crisis bigger than what we saw during the Harshad Mehta's times?
Harshad Mehta was a different ball game altogether. Harshad Mehta was no industrialist. He was not. He was not in a whole host of companies in which Indians and others had investments. He was a market operator who was using a loophole in the banking system to raise money against shares, and then it had a multiplying effect. However, the similarity is pretty similar. Is this that like Harshad Mehta's acquisition of shares, Adani's acquisitions of business is founded on debt. One debt upon the other, a fresh asset comes in, that is then parlayed into more debt to acquire a third asset, and so on and so forth. So when the debt tap gets squeezed or gets turned off, then it turns into a debt trap. If you cannot service your debt, if the cost of finance gets too high for you, and if interest costs keep mounting, while your assets do not necessarily give you the revenue that will enable you to finance that debt, that's where companies, corporations, and even countries have gone down. So, to that extent, that Hindenburg pointed out that the whole of the Adani enterprise was built on a mountain of debt. In one sense, the Hindenburg has done public service. We've been warned. What have we done with the warning? No, well, the country as a whole seems to have just put its head in the sand and said, oh, it will all blow away. This is all nothing. We've seen. And that same behavior is being repeated now. You have to finally take a call. Is Indian industry, Indian enterprise, and Indian national wealth, in a sense, simply to be tied to this one conglomerate? Or is it that, like others who are re-evaluating their investments, does India and does its government start re-evaluating? That I don't think we as yet see signs of it happening. With the fall in the Bombay Stock Exchange, the question is whether government institutions like the LIC and others will be told to prop up the share prices, and how much of any hole that gets revealed will be filled up by friendly funding from the government or other sources. Right. Those are the questions that I can see emerging over the short-term perspective. And on the long-term perspective, if this case keeps dragging on, and you see, Mr. Adani also, his travels get restricted, that will have its own impact.
Right. But in this particular case, Mr. Hegde, my question to you again, that can the government afford to protect Adani, or it doesn't have an option but to protect him? How is the government's behavior really, I mean, what does it really reflect?
Well, can it afford not to protect him? It cannot afford to let him go down in a hurry. You cannot have a financial panic. You may have to insulate yourself, prepare a soft landing, and then take the necessary decisions. To that extent, maybe the government not saying anything currently is a good idea. But you cannot simply pretend that nothing has happened, that everything will be all right, that sab changasi and business as usual. That I don't think can work anymore.
No, but Giri, if you look at the response of the government, it's almost similar to what we had seen during the Hindenburg crisis. The BJP press conferences saying that attack on Adani is like an attack on the Indian share market. He's a wealth creator. This is all what Sambit Patra said yesterday. So there is no difference in the response of the government. We see what it was during the Hindenburg time and now what it is. But how long can they continue to drag with this kind of a response? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, there will be questions asked, not only in India, but globally as well, as to what the SEBI chief is doing, what the finance minister is doing, how could a prime minister of such a big democratic country was allowing all this? And how long can Modi afford to dodge these questions? That is the biggest question.
I mean, look, let us look at the Hindenburg one. This was about stock rigging, and obviously there needed to be some kind of a probe by the regulator SEBI. You know, questions were raised in Parliament, and then the Supreme Court set up one committee and all that. But here you're talking about bribes being given to Indian officials by a US agency. They don't have to take cognizance of it, in spite of the fact that certain political parties have said that some of the states where these bribes were given were ruled by the other parties. I mean, the simple thing would be to say that fine, let the ED and the CBI go ahead and probe these kind of allegations, like they did with the Delhi chief minister, former chief minister, and they put him in jail for having taken bribes worth 100 crores. They can do something similar. But then what will happen is that if it is proved that these state governments did actually take bribes, then the person who gave the bribe will also have to be put into jail. Whether the government of India would be very keen on doing it, that's a call that they need to take. But there is something else. I did a bit of research and I want to share it with the viewers. And let me tell you what it is. Now, let us look at uh, the debt raised by the Adani Group since financial year of 2014. The gross debt between 2014 and 2019 was around 1 lakh 6,964 crores, right? And from 19 to 24, 2019 to 24, it was around 2 lakh 41,394 crores. It's more than doubled, right? That's something that needs to be taken care of. At the same time, the exposure of the Adani Group's total debt from domestic banks was as high as 36%, which is around 88,100 crore as of March 31st, 2024. This, of course, includes long-term loans and working capital requirements, which is quite small. In the global banks, which we are now, we are talking about, especially about the US and all that, the total debt, around 26% came from foreign banks, which was around 61,900 crores. So from the capital markets, global capital markets, Adani Group has raised around 29% of its debt from global capital markets, which amounts to around 69,000 crores. Okay, and from the Indian bourses, around 5% of that, and the rest of the 4% is from other sources. Now, what does it mean? These are a significant portion of the gross debt, which is around 2.41 lakh crore, are long-term debts, which is 92%, right? Now, the fact is that you need to service these loans, these debts. Where do you find the money for that, right? And that's going to be an issue. And for
Oh,
what I
you mean to say, I'm just clarifying it a little for the viewers and making it simpler. That are you saying that paying back these debts will be a huge issue for Adani? Are you saying that?
So several things could play out here. Now,
Say, for example, sorry to interrupt you again. In the Indian context, normally what you see that the loans are waived off, or they are. I mean, somehow it's converted into an NPA, and the government will try and somehow tide over the problems and give a loan waiver or allow them some kind of a safe passage where they don't have to pay so much. So, is it going to be happening the same way with the global markets as well, with the global banks or the other governments
no,
of
no,
the
the government might waive off certain part of it,
hmm,
but they just can't waive out. Some of these banks will collapse, and then
right?
they are taken from global banks, from global capital markets. Obviously,
Hmm.
that won't get waived off. But there are several, several things that could play out now. Instead of raising further debt, he may want to go ahead and sell off some of the projects.
Hmm.
Now, at
No, so
what
you are
at
saying
what
that
price will
Adani
he be
might
able
have
to
to
sell it
sell
off?
off. No, you are saying that Adani might have to sell off certain projects.
Yeah, because it will become difficult
Okay,
for him to go ahead and raise
right,
further fund. So the only option is to go ahead and sell them off. But that
right,
that that gets into the category of distress sale, right?
right.
So I mean, what I'm saying is a whole lot of these things could play out. But because there is a certain amount of, within quotes, a bit of immunity around him, it might take longer, but certainly it's not a good story for the Adani Group any longer.
Right. So if you're saying that it's not a good story for Adani any longer, uh, Mr. Hegde, may I ask you a very blunt question that can, the does Adani's ship look like a sinking ship now? And it's just on the verge of collapse. If these are the things which we are discussing, where the paying back is getting difficult, he might have to sell off for certain projects. I mean, that surely doesn't look like a happy story, but are we seeing the Adani ship almost on the verge of sinking? Or if the immunity will allow him certain exit doors by which he can survive?
That only time will tell. It is like the Titanic hit the iceberg. Did the iceberg cause as much damage as it did to the original Titanic? Or is it something where there are life rafts and things like that, so that the disaster is to that extent contained? Just to illustrate Girish's point on debt, see, I'm just trying to simplify things. Supposing I have a house worth, let's say, 5 crores. On that, I have taken a loan. It's financed by 4 crores of a loan at 10% interest. That means every year I would have to pay roughly around at least 40 lakhs of rupees. Now, because my credit ratings have gone down, I've been slow in paying loans or something of that kind. The banks then say, okay, to continue your loan, we can only give it to you at 12%, 13%. So the cost goes up. And in the meanwhile, based on the fact on my original loan and the fact that I have a house, if I have in turn again mortgaged it with somebody else and there's further loans and bought another property, then at some stage I'll have to say, no. Let me first get rid of the other property, bring down my debt, and then bring it within manageable standards. And debts, where does the money come from? It is only if I can rent that house out and get a rent which will pay off part of the interest. So the moment your credibility and credit score start suffering,
Right.
people lose interest in you and people hike up interest rates. That leads to financial disaster.
Okay, so I'll just take the concluding comments from both of you. Coming to you, Giri, what you see, what you see happening in the next 3-4 days now, given the fact that Parliament session is starting from Monday, that is 25th of November. I'm sure the opposition will raise its demand on Prime Minister resigning, or there should be a JPC. I'm sure all this is going to happen. But what do you expect from the government? Do you see any possibility of Nirmala Sitharaman coming out and speaking at all? Do you see the possibility of Madhvi Buch trying to come up and explain some few things? Because a lot of questions asked, as I said, not only in India but globally elsewhere. Now people have started talking about the rotten system which the country is going through.
The government need not answer any of the questions raised by the opposition parties because the so-called link between the Prime Minister and the Adani Group is not that it is open or well established or anything like that. Okay, this is a private individual, private company which has been taken to the court by the US courts and by the US regulator, right? And that's all there is to it as of now. Right? So why should the government go ahead and give any kind of statements on that? You see, when it came to Hindenburg, it had to do with the Indian stock market. Okay, which meant a whole lot of retail investors losing their money. Here, there is no direct link in the first place. I mean, you don't have to go around saying anything in the first place. If they do, then they are committing themselves.
Okay, but what is your feeling, Mr. Hegde, that should the government be talking, should it not be talking, and of course, all the questions raised? How can you completely dismiss those questions which are being asked? And I'm sure the entire world press will be talking about it.
Well, just because people are interested, it's not necessary that governments talk. But
Okay.
I disagree with Mr. Giri here simply because it's not just Mr. Adani as a private company alone. It is all the investments that have been
Yes.
made through the mutual funds, through the LIC, and the impact that any dip in share prices of the Adani Group has on the Sensex as a whole. Add to that, there are questions of credibility and of the market as well as the regulator out here. It may not be an option to remain totally quiet, but I do think that the government will be very careful in what it says and what it commits. I actually suspect that Parliament will have a fresh diversion. The Maharashtra elections will be there over the weekend. The results will be seen as a validation of something, or if they go the other way, then that plus Adani might have some greater impact in Parliament, and you might have some kind of diversion, like a Waqf bill being suddenly brought in or something of that kind, so that that people stop asking relevant questions. I think programs like these are required for people to go out and read for themselves what all the issues are. We can only point them in the correct direction.
Absolutely. So all depends on tomorrow what happens as far as Maharashtra and Jharkhand elections are concerned, as what Mr. Hegde said, that people would be watching. And depending on the results, that apparently could decide the direction of the things in Parliament from Monday onwards. So we'll have to wait and watch what happens. And tomorrow, please stay tuned to the Federal for the live coverage on the Counting Day special, which begins from 10 a.m. onwards. We'll have a slew of programs in the morning, in the afternoon, and in the evening as well. Thank you so much, Mr. Hegde, for joining. Giri, thank you very much. And one appeal to the viewers who are watching this discussion: subscribe to our channel, send us your feedback, and stay tuned to the Federal.